Hi there, welcome to Neppy Invest. So a few days ago I did a video on Altura mining going into administration. Maybe I did that video 2 days ago because the announcement was dropped at the end of trading on the 26th of October. And since then a lot has been happening. It's a very interesting situation that's been evolving over the last few days. And drama exists in all sorts of relationships, everyone knows that, and even exists between lithium mining companies, Altura and Pilbara. So a bit of drama on the ASX. You can't get away from drama no matter where you try. So how's all this evolved? So if you go back through history, last few years, Altura Mining has gone into production. To get into production, they need a fair bit of money, so they got a loan for about $200 million or so, which I think they were paying something like 14 to 15% interest on that loan, and they were struggling to pay it back. They weren't getting much. The lithium prices had gone down, etc., and the lenders were getting a bit antsy, and they gave them to the 31st of October this year to sort of recapitalise that loan. But on the 26th of October, the lenders decided to appoint some receivers. This was a sign to shareholders and to the market that they'd given up, and it was also, maybe I thought, a sign that maybe Altura Mining, the managers there, the directors there, couldn't find a solution. As it turns out, that was not right. Now, I did the video and I just mentioned what's the future of Altura, and I said their assets will probably be sold cents on the dollar, and maybe Pilbara would be buying it. That's quite prescient because, as it turns out, yeah, if you don't know the story, I'll get to that in a second. So I didn't think much of it, but I thought maybe Future of Altura lay in maybe being a shell company and maybe a backdoor listing. That's maybe part of their future. That's what I was thinking, but maybe not. Then on the October 27th, only one day after October 26th, they appointed some voluntary administrators. So that's something normal there. That's what happens in these sort of situations. And then the next day, probably the biggest shock announcement, in my opinion, was that Pilbara Minerals. Now, Pilbara Minerals is an obvious candidate to buy out Altura because they're neighbours. They're in the same sort of field, lithium mining. They're neighbours. And I thought it was a natural fit in time that possibly Altura and Pilbara would actually merge and become a bigger, more meaner, leaner fighting machine. I thought that was a possibility. And I think in that possibility, Pilbara Minerals would have had to pay a bit of a premium, say 40% premium over the share price or the value of Altura. But in this situation, Pilbara is able to get Altura Mining's assets for much cheaper. In fact, they're willing to pay $175 million US to buy, and that's being backrolled by Australian Super and RCF. The fact this happened one day after the appointment of voluntary administrators and 2 days after the appointment of receivers, there is no doubt in my mind, now I could be mistaken, but there's no doubt in my mind, Pilbara Minerals went to the lenders and said, we have this proposal, we have this backing of these, Australian Super and RCF. We can give you the money that you're owed. And for the benefit of Pilbara, he's getting it for cheap. That's a benefit of shareholders. And Pilbara Minerals' share price went up something like 12% today. So a fairly ballsy move. You have to think by Pilbara Minerals to do that. A very smart move for their shareholders. So directors and management are always looking to add value to for their shareholders. Unfortunately, I think there's the other side of the coin. This is a devastating move for Altura, 13,000 shareholders and unsecured creditors. This would decimate a lot of people. I don't want to say it's going to destroy lives, but I think just looking at hot copper forums, there's a lot of people going to lose possibly even their life savings over this move by Pilbara Minerals. But wait, there is a little bit more. So the end is not certain for Altura Minerals and for their shareholders, because Altura Minerals, their managers there have said they're very, very close to coming up with a recapitalisation with Azure and Canaccord, which would preserve value for the 13,000 odd shareholders and its unsecured creditors. It's very similar priced than what Pilbara is willing. So in this case, the lenders won't miss out, won't lose anything. And as I've mentioned before, Pilbara Minerals' proposal would see them pick up Altura Minerals for very cheap, and then all these shareholders and unsecured creditors in Altura Minerals would be devastated, decimated. Now, in the case of it being recapitalisation or capitalised, in that scenario, the loser would be Pilbara, but they're not that much worse off. So there's a sort of ethical and moral question here, because if you look at who's going to be worse off in either scenario, definitely the people going to be, the shareholders and unsecured creditors, are going to be significantly worse off in the scenario where Pilbara Minerals gets this for very cheap. In the scenario where it's recapitalised and Altura Minerals can keep on going as a going entity, the only entity or the only company who is worse off in that situation is Pilbara Minerals, and they're not that much worse off. In fact, the share price only went up 10% today, so they're only worse off by 10%. So I think there is that moral and ethical question here. Whoever's going to make the end decision, I'm not sure how they come to the end decision. I think that question has to be there, but this is business. And sometimes in business, the morals and ethics are sort of just thrown away, not even thought about. I'm hoping it is thought about, because this is a fairly significant decision when you think about it. There's even more. There is a threat of legal action from the Altura directors, saying that their proposal would preserve value for the shareholders and unsecured creditors, while Pilbara Minerals wouldn't. There's also a possibility, I'm not sure how true this is, that there is a possibility that Pilbara Minerals breach confidentiality agreements by going into Altura's data room, and that would make sense because they saw what they have, that sort of thing. So that's just mentioned in this Australian article. So a very interesting decision coming up ahead, a very interesting story here. I'm going to be following this very closely, because I think this is a very interesting dilemma that whoever makes the decision has to come up with, and I hope they make the right decision. I acknowledge that Pilbara Minerals have done a very good job at finding value for their shareholders, but that's not, that sort of greed, I think has to be just let aside for the good of humanity. So I think there's going to be some Pilbara Minerals shareholders who maybe disagree with me. There's going to be some Altura shareholders who can't believe Pilbara Minerals are doing this. If you disagree with me, leave some comments. If you agree with me, leave some comments. But I'll be following this story going forward, because I think it's one of the most interesting stories I've seen for quite a while on the ASX. And in fact, I am hoping that Altura Mining comes out on top in the end, and Altura shareholders don't lose most of their capital. And that's really all I've got for today. So have a good day, and talk to you later. Bye.